30 minutes that my mom and my little sister left to go to Walmart to go pick up things, he passed. And he passed after everyone else had sat there and talked to him. Grandma had read him a letter that somebody wrote from the family about the impact that he had on their lives. And slowly but surely, the life just left him. I mean, he was very, very loud, and he was in a coma, but he was just breathing, like wheezing, and you could hear the life being pulled out of him.
That makes my stomach churn because I can't even fathom A, being a human that has to go through that, and B, being a sorry, I'm gonna lose it because my dad is so important to me. I can't imagine watching that. Sorry.
It was shocking as a 16-year-old kid that was like, this isn't real. I mean, for the last 3.5 years, I said, "No, Dad's gonna make it out of this."
Right.
Are you,
Right. I'm 39. I can't even think about my dad.
Yeah.
Passing.
I mean, I was like, are you, the thing that ran through my head was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
My dad of all people is gonna make all of your, and this is aggressive, but I was like, all of your family and
Right.
your friends, and whatever, they're not strong enough to make it out of this, but
Right.
my dad is.
Right.
My dad will fucking make it through this because it's Larry Gillespie.
Yeah.
You don't play with Larry Gillespie.
Yeah.
That's someone that you don't get on the wrong side of because he loves hard and he defends hard.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
And he deserves to be here, right?
Yeah.
That's
and why would he be taken? Of all
Right.
people that we know, of all
Right.
shitty individuals
Yeah.
in our space in Peachtree City, why is he being taken, not being one of them?
Right. And
Come
somebody
on.
that takes care of themselves and is
Takes care of others.
Right, takes care of others, and it's so
Gives freely
unfair.
of his time, his money, his expertise, his resources.
Gosh.
Give the shirt off his back, the car out of the garage, all the tools out of the garage too. Oh, you need a bed to sleep in? Okay, my wife and I will sleep in James's bed. James can go to the couch and you can have our room.
Right.
That kind of servant.
That kind of guy. So, good Lord. So your mom and sister come home for are there cell phones at that? This is only 10 years ago, right? So yeah, there's cell phones. Do you call, what do you do? What's your next step?
So Terry, I believe Terry or Denny, my grandma, called them and let them know that they need to come back and to not speak too loudly because Hannah is sitting next to my mom and she needs to be told by everyone sitting down because she's
How old is
young.
your sister at that point?
I mean, she just turned. I mean, in August she'll be 22.
So she's 4 years younger. You're
Yeah.
16. She's 12. Right.
Young.
Good Lord.
Still got bangs at this point, I think, front bangs. But just I know for me it was such an odd and very aggressive experience. I can't imagine being younger.
Right.
I can't imagine being the age that I was when I first got in trouble for just being a little rebel.
Yeah.
And losing Dad then.
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be if that happened.
Right.
At all. I have no idea.
Probably be sitting in jail somewhere.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of second chances for the 19th time, and in my adult life, I mean, not the same track record, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, my childhood could have gone a lot of different ways.
Right. Right. So you're sitting there at 16 and you literally watch him take his last breath. Your mom comes home, your sister comes home. What, are you just not feeling anything emotionally? Do you remember, or is it kind of like a blur?
My thinking went immediately from this isn't real to no, this is real, and now Dad's not here. It's time for me to be the man of the house immediately.
Okay.
So before even 2 hours had passed after his passing, all of his friends are at our house.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone, 7 fellow deacons at the church, and all of his friends, somebody that he was in the Marine Corps with that lived close, came over.
Yeah.
His pilot friends, everyone from Delta and Northwest, everyone, our whole house was filled with people. Almost 2 hours later. And I remember just being well, the torch has been passed,
Right.
and it's time for me to be the man.
Right.
So what does a man do? Well, at this time, I'm well, men don't cry. Well, men don't X. Well, men don't A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. So because of that, I've got to be the man of the house now. And what's interesting is I think his friends didn't realize that they did this, but they reinforced that it was time for me to be the man.
God,
By even communicating that in that format without understanding how I took that.
right. And the type, I mean, it's one thing to maybe say to like a 22-year-old, but to put that sort of pressure on a 16-year-old when you're already dealing with 16-year-old things anyways, I mean, that's not even fair, right? That's not even appropriate.
I mean,
but
at 16,
adults don't know what to do either.
I mean, at 16, for a lot of people, and maybe not everyone, but for me, you're exploring with your sexuality.
Right.
Like you're getting to know the opposite sex or
Right.
the same sex or what
Right.
have you. Like you're going down a path of exploration
Right.
to things that are novel to you in whatever format that looks like for you.
Yeah.
But that's where your head's at when
Right,
you're at that
right.
age, and you're like trying to exist through high school and be cool
Right.
and also be nice, not be a
Yeah.
dick, but also still have fun. Like
Right.
you're going through a lot of things. You're still in the developmental stages in a lot of ways, in a lot of things.
Yeah.
To then be told, hey, you got to be the man,
Right.
and then not realizing until retrospectively, years and years later, wow, because it was reinforced immediately after Dad passing that I needed to be the man. I just said, okay, well, men do X because my subscription to what a man is this. And some of that is imparted by Dad, but some of that is also culturally at the time. Men weren't crying.
Right.
The strong men were they were war hardened and they were going to battle. And
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
They weren't writing books. They weren't having they weren't doing that kind of stuff.
So you just went on automatic pilot, really, at that point.
I did, and I
Yeah.
just said, well, I'm going to be the man. I'm going to be what I think a man is,
Sure.
what I know a man to be, and I'm going to exhibit some of the beneficial qualities that my father has and some of the experiences that he shared with others and the light that he brought to them, but I'm going to make sure that I do that at the expense of nobody else but myself.
Mm-hmm. So 6 months after that, what happens?
Yeah, and it's actually a little bit less than 6 months. I mean, we're talking November, and on 3/4, a friend of mine from high school smokes synthetic spice,
Ooh.
synthetic marijuana, and drowned in a hot tub.
Oh.
And so that is actually where Chase's Law came about.
Really?
Chase, yeah.
I'm not
that
kidding.
that was a buddy of mine. Yep.
Wow.
We went to church together. We were in the same school. He played soccer. I didn't play soccer. We were more tied together from going to First Baptist in Peachtree City than
Okay.
we were anything else. We didn't hang out day in, day out. We were cordial and we had a relationship with his family, and so
Right.
we spent time together, but we were not.
So you weren't at that party?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it wasn't at a party. It was at his house.
Oh, it was at his house.
Because he was grounded. Because of the
Oh.
party we all went to like 3 weeks before, 4 weeks before.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine how like his parents must have dealt with that. Oh, so how did that hit you then?
So that hit me. I was called on. I was at a friend's house that night, and I got a call from my mom at like 6 a.m. And we had been drinking the night before, and I was
Right.
like, "What are you calling me at 6 a.m. for? What is
Yeah.
happening?" So I answer, and she's yelling, "Were you with Chase?" And da 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 da. And I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And then she kind of elaborated on what went down, and was like, "Hey, I need you to come over to the Burnett's, and I need you to help us with this." And I said, "Help you with this? What do you mean?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, what I need you to do is I need you to come over and I need you to call all of his friends." I was like, "Interesting. So you need me to call all of his close friends and let them know that he's passed and that they need to come over." Well, I started doing that, and it was not at this point that, the whole dad thing came back at all. It was not really until his service that I spoke at, that his father asked me to speak at, and offer a message of hope to a packed out church
Right.
with 400, 500 people in it. Right before we went over to a soccer game where they honored him on the field. But it was not until that funeral. So I'll skip the communication to his friends. That was very interesting. It was a lot of denial from them, and it
Yeah.
kind of mirrored how I denied that my
Yeah.
dad was gone, because they were like, I went by Jamie in high school,
Okay.
or in middle school, and then James in high school. I switched over. I thought, I was like, Jamie, that's just, I like James better. So I switched over, but a lot of people that knew me in middle school still called me, and they're like, "No, Jamie, like, no,
Yeah.
that didn't happen. Stop
Yeah.
lying. That's not a funny joke.
Yeah.
That's not." And it was interesting because I was the first point of contact with like 20 or 30 of them,
Sure.
and being called a liar and whatnot as I'm standing in the Burnett's house, and it was. I'll fast forward to the funeral. The funeral was interesting. The message went. I wrote a speech. went up there, talked, and it wasn't until the conclusion of the funeral that literally I'm sitting in a pew in the church that I grew up in, and everyone's starting to clear out and go do basically visitation with the family. This was not, open or closed casket or anything. This was just at the church, just after. There's food and whatnot. And I just broke down. And I broke down because it reminded me very aggressively from seeing other people doing the same thing that I did with Dad. Yeah. It reminded me that this is another shared experience with death that I handled maybe better because I had just gone through it. But what I didn't do is address the initial cut. I put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and puffed my chest out and was the strong person in this situation for them. And it's funny because a lot of that came because of how I had reacted to my dad.
Right.
So it's reinforced. This is a feedback loop.
Yeah.
It just continues to reinforce the behavior. And it's no one's fault. It's my responsibility to deal with. But it was at that moment that I was like, damn.
Yeah.
I haven't addressed any of this with my dad.
So you knew that you're sitting in this moment, you're having this breakdown in the middle of church or at the end of the ceremony or the visitation. And was anyone around? Like, did anyone see this happen?
There was 3 or 4 of his closest friends that I think it clicked.
Were you like trying to hold it together the whole
Yes.
time? Because I know when I am about to break down, like I try so hard to hold it together and it makes it worse, right?
I was breathing very deep.
Right.
And, diaphragm breathing.
Practicing all the things.
Big and like trying to hold back the tears. Then when they dismissed the service.
Be a man.
When they dismissed the service and everyone got up and walked out, there's 2 or 3 people that were left back, and that's when I just broke down. I couldn't hold it back anymore. So I'm basically sitting in the pew by myself with 3 or 4 other people in there, period. And the group that was on the stage that had just wrapped up playing music.
Right.
And I just broke down aggressively. And it's almost pretty telling because the individuals that are the closest to him that saw this, for whatever reason, they call it intuition, call it whatever, they knew what was happening. And it was interesting because they just sat with me. They didn't try to bombard me. They didn't try. No, they didn't. Oh, you're gonna be okay. Right, they just said, "Hey, we're not going anywhere.
We're right here.
If you need to talk, we're happy to talk now or later or what have you."
Yeah. Do you think they knew that it was stemming from your dad?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because there were people that were in my life that were not as close to me, but they knew that I had just lost.
Well, and if you weren't that absolutely close with Chase, then they were probably like, not that you're overreacting, but it could just be like, okay, that seems maybe a little out of character, so it's probably going back 6 months ago to when you're...
Seems out of character for James or Jamie, depending on who you're talking to. But then also, seems out of character for that, but then, wait a second, he just lost his dad. Right. So I think it's a compounding effect. And, I wish that Chase was still here. I mean, he was a hell of a guy and had a bright future ahead of him. But it was interesting because that experience is the first time that I acknowledged and was like, okay, got to address this about Dad.
It's pretty incredible because I don't think a lot of 16, 17-year-olds would have that sort of awareness. I think a lot of adults in their late 20s, early 30s, 40s, 50s, I mean, there are people 60 years old that have had things like this happen to them that they still haven't addressed. And it's really unfortunate because it's going to affect you for the rest of your life. Like, your life is never going to be the same. However, what you do with it can be different. And it isn't until we take responsibility for things that we have been through. And like you said, there's never anyone to blame, Like, even people that do have I interviewed Kim Shaper, and it was one of my favorite interviews. I mean, she was molested by her grandfather. And, like, that should never happen to any human being in the world. And that is not her fault. But unfortunately, it becomes your responsibility. Like, it's really unfortunate that now you have to deal with that. And not to say there's a timeline to be like, okay, now I have to deal with this. Like, you have to go through the steps and the stages. And it sounds like you were basically forced into going through the steps and the stages with that breakdown. And almost like, thank God that happened then. Right?
Yeah, thank God I'm glad that it happened at 17 and not 25.
Right.
Because if it happened at 25 and not 17, I'd be a different person.